Welcome to the Romeo and Juliet, Act 1, Scene 5 video analysis. Scene 5 is the moment we've been waiting for. Romeo and Juliet finally meet. Romeo first spots Juliet on page 27 when he says to his serving man, "Who is the girl on the arm of that lucky knight over there?" referring to Juliet. We quickly see from Romeo's question that for him it was definitely love at first sight when he saw Juliet. When you look on page 29 and we see Juliet just letting Romeo take her hand on page 29, we also get the impression that for her as well, this encounter was definitely love at first sight. Romeo and Juliet's first conversation is actually a shared sonnet starting on page 29 and ending on page 30. Now, if you remember, a sonnet is a poetic form that has 14 lines and follows a very particular rhyming pattern. Now, in this shared sonnet, there are a number of Christian metaphors used. Romeo uses these Christian metaphors to try to convince Juliet to let him kiss her, whereas Juliet uses these Christian metaphors to try to resist Romeo. I'd like you to look at the passages, the sonnets on page 29 and 30, and highlight the different Christian references. Now, I want you to pay particular attention to the instant chemistry between these two lovers. We see right away that they're pretty much finishing each other's thoughts, and it's very much playful the way they're talking and the way they're flirting with one another. Their conversation is quite playful and really sweet to watch this relationship develop. And for a moment, the reader actually gets lost in these thoughts and almost forgets the tragic ending that is waiting for these two lovers that was pointed out in the prologue. Now on page 30, Romeo and Juliet finally share their first and second kiss. The first kiss was initiated by Romeo, whereas the second kiss was initiated by Juliet. I want you to look closely at the passage on page 30. What do you notice about Romeo's character when he initiates the kiss? What do you notice about the dialogue? Then I want you to look at Juliet after the initial kiss. Look at her reaction. I want you to pay particular attention to the change in her character. Something happens from the moment she's kissed, just seconds earlier, to her reaction and then what she does next to Romeo. So pay attention to that. What would you call this transformation, if you will? Keeping in mind the essential question, what does growing up entail, that we've been looking at all throughout the year. Now, early on in scene 5, just before Romeo and Juliet meet, we learn a little bit more about some of the characters in the play. We get a little more insight into Tybalt along with Lord Capulet, and we hear a little about Romeo's reputation in Verona. Now on page 28, Tybalt discovers that Romeo and his friends have crashed the Capulet party. I want you to look closely at page 28. I want you to look at Tybalt's reaction and what do we learn more about his character, keeping in mind that Tybalt is very impulsive. He's having a strong reaction to their presence. Then I want you to look at Lord Capulet and what we learn about his character traits on page 28 and then again on page 29. Look particularly at the change in the way he addresses Tybalt. What do we learn from this? For instance, on page 28, referring to Romeo and the Montague guys that are crashing the party, he says, "I wouldn't insult him in my own house for all the wealth in this town, so calm down. Just ignore him." Sounds like very sensible advice. What does that reveal to us about Lord Capulet? Now we know Tybalt refuses to listen to his uncle's advice, so then on page 29, look at the change in Lord Capulet. Again, what does this reveal to us about his character? Notice that he says on page 29, go on, You're an insolent little boy. Is that how it is, really? This stupidity will come back to bite you. I know what I'll do. You have to contradict me, do you? I'll teach you a lesson. You're a punk. Get away. Keep your mouth shut or else. So again, we see a change in Lord Capulet. For the first time, he's not speaking with calmness. We see a little bit of rage coming out. What does this reveal to us about his character when his instructions or his advice isn't followed? Now, we also learn finally a little bit about Romeo's reputation in Verona. On page 28, Lord Capulet refers to that reputation. Again, make note of it in both the text and your character chart. At the end of scene 5, after having flirted with one another and having kissed on 2 occasions, the scene finishes with Romeo and Juliet discovering who the other is. I want you to look on page 31 and page 32, and I want you to try to figure out what they mean, what each character meant when they said the following statements. For instance, on page 31, Romeo's reaction to finding out that the woman he just instantly fell in love with is a Capulet. He says on page 31, "Yes, but I'm afraid. I'm in more trouble than ever." What did he mean there when he said that? What is he referring to? Then on page 32, you have Juliet's reaction to finding out that the man that she just kissed and that she just fell in love with is actually Romeo, a Montague. Notice her reaction. Notice that she says at the end of her dialogue, she says, "Love is a monster for making me fall in love with my worst enemy." What does she mean there? What's her opinion about love? And how has it changed since scene 3? That's it for the scene 5 analysis video. And in fact, that's the end of Act 1. Coming up next in Act 2, we have the famous balcony scene where Romeo and Juliet declare their love for one another. In many ways, Act 2 is the happiest of all the acts in the play. So that's something to look forward to. Like always, if you have any questions about anything that took place in scene 5, please don't hesitate to post your questions on Edmodo. Just remember to check back to see if I've answered those questions or if any of your peers have commented on that.